All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday, everybody's probably least favorite day of the week. But that's okay, we're getting through it. Right, Felicia? Okay. So Vito is here. Good morning to you. Keep in mind that we have a short week this week. So Friday is, for you, a holiday.
Oh, excuse me, can I go? All of the Fridays a holiday or just class A and class B?
Like the entire day is a holiday. Yeah, like the entire this day. Yeah, there's no class on Friday. What's that?
We have holiday on Friday?
You do.
No.
You have a holiday on Friday.
What day is it?
It is a professional development day. So you guys take the day off and I go to professional development sessions so that I can be a better teacher.
So just student for holiday.
Unfortunately, they don't know that that's impossible, so it'll just be a waste of time. But sorry, what was that, Mike?
Just for students.
Just for students. So I have stuff to do on Friday, but you have the day off. Not bad, hey? Not bad. So yeah, just so you don't forget that. Let's jump in though to where we were on Friday, because we were talking about India, right? So you told me that. Well, what did you tell me? The Indo-Aryans. Where are these people coming from?
Yeah, they come from Afghanistan, Pakistan mountains, and Central Asia.
Yeah. Good. So Central Asia, they kind of come through Afghanistan and Pakistan, or what's now Afghanistan and Pakistan, into northern India. What do we kind of know about them? What do we know about these Indo-Aryans?
Yeah, there are special sounds or voice. They learn it very deeper, and it appears before they have their own language.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's correct. So the film showed us a couple things, but I think the people who were chanting with those words that were in no known language, I think those are people that were there before the Indo-Aryans. And so that sort of thing is older. But the Indo-Aryans come in with their own language. What language was that?
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit, right? Which I think some probably Indians would prefer that it not have come from outside of India, but it seems like it did, right? That language was imported into India by the Indo-Aryans. What do we know about them in terms of how did they make their living? What did they do?
Like they in a group where patriarch is the one
They were in a group where what?
where like they have a patriarch
Right?
rule the group and the son will inherit the father's name.
Yeah. So we have a society that's patriarchal where men are kind of in charge and sons inherit the wealth and name from their father. Good. What else do we know? They have some choice in marriage. Sorry, what?
You mean about their buildings
Uh,
or
about their, well, let's just say about their culture in general. What do we know?
they have a special drink that's made by a planet and it makes them relax. They're
No,
living-
no, it doesn't. So they have a special drink. What's the special drink called?
Yeah,
Similar culture.
that have coffee, something like that in it that get feel happy to our brain.
Yeah. So it's called soma.
oh, someone.
Yeah, and it has ephedrine in it. So ephedrine's a stimulant, and it makes you feel kind of awake and buzzed and kind of alert, right? And so we saw the narrator of that documentary. He kind of went in search of that root, found it, boiled it up. The guys around him probably thought he was insane, but whatever. Boiled it up, and yeah, he was like, "Oh, I can feel it. Right? I can feel it kind of making me tingly and alert." What else do we know about the Indo-Aryans?
Indo-Aryan means like respectable and honorable.
Yeah.
And they saw themselves as like
Yeah, so the term Aryan to these people means civilized, right? Or the sophisticated ones, the civilized ones, right? And of course every culture thinks that they're the civilized ones, and the other people are not, but that's okay. Yeah, they thought that they were kind of the civilized, sophisticated ones. Felicia, you mentioned that they were engaging in some agriculture. They were doing some farming, but what else were they doing? Yeah, probably. Yeah, we're really close. Yeah, pastoralism. Yeah. So they had herds of. Yeah, they domesticated animals. What kind of animal mostly? Cows. Yeah, they probably had other animals too, but cows were the important one, right? Okay, so we've got these people who are herding cows. They come in from kind of Central Asia. They speak Sanskrit. They have kind of a patriarchal society where kind of men are in charge. What do we know about their religion? What? Polytheistic. They have multiple gods. Who's the main god we hear about? Close. Nope.
Yeah, you say that the biggest god in the sky. What?
There you go. Yeah, Indra, right? So Indra is kind of their main god, right? He's kind of a heroic figure. He's the god of the rain and the storm, right? But he's also a protector. He's a warrior. And how do we know all these things about these Indo-Aryans? Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's kind of a different question, but we did see that, right? We saw that there was a scholar who realized that there were some linguistic similarities between Sanskrit and Greek and Latin, right? Yeah, which is weird, right? Because Greece and Rome are thousands of miles away from India, right? But what does that tell us? What do those similarities in the language tell us? That they what? Yeah, they come from the same kind of language group, right? So there is an older language that kind of gave birth to Sanskrit and Latin and Greek, right? And again, we don't really know what that language was like. It's disappeared, right? But there's a grandparent language, right? Or a great-grandparent language that they have in common, right? And so some of their words are similar, some of their structures are similar, and again, linguistic anthropologists are the people who are trained to be able to distinguish those similarities, right? Yeah.
Could you spell the god's name?
Yes. So the main god there is Indra, like so.
And the dreams that they dream, the name is
Soma. Soma. Yeah. Okay, so let me just see. I've got some slides here, but we've talked about a lot of these things. So let me just see. Okay, we don't have to go through all of that. Yeah, so this is what Felicia was just talking about. We saw a bundle, right? A bundle of writings that our narrator went to a university, I think, library or a university in India, and the Indian scholar, she brought him this little bundle, right? And this is writing that's hundreds of years old, right? And it's in Sanskrit, it writes out the the Vedas, right? These kind of songs or prayers to the god, right? To Indra and to other gods as well. And again, that's how we know about these early Aryans, right? From the things that they sung about or the things that they prayed about, right? And so, again, writing is key, right? If you can read the writing, you can learn a lot about these people. And we'd probably never know these things without the preservation of these religious texts, right? And religion is good for that, because religious texts need to be preserved, right? They need to be passed on, and often they are, I was going to say religiously, often they are religiously, right? Okay, so let me just see, right. So we talked a little bit of, so we watched this first section of the documentary. I think I'd like to jump ahead a little bit. So sorry, let me just, yeah. So this is where we were on Friday, right? We got partway through this video and then we had to stop because we were running out of time. And so this was the question that you just answered for me, is that William Jones discovered that Sanskrit had similarities with Greek and Latin, right? Suggesting that they had the same kind of parent language. And he did it by comparing words, right? So I'll just, yeah. So here, have a look at some of these, right? You can, I know we're not linguistic anthropologists in this room, but you can see the similarities, can't you? Yeah, vater, padre, pater, pitar, right? All of this similar P and T sound, right, that shows up again and again. And again, sometimes it gets changed a little bit. The number 1, right? 1, ein, uno, hen, ungus, ekam. Those are a little bit different, right? But you can see how some of these words are somewhat similar, right? And again, they're not all identical, because all of these languages evolve on their own. Sometimes we borrow sometimes we borrow words from other languages, right? And English is full of that, right? Because English has borrowed from Norman and Saxon and German and French, and it's a real hodgepodge of all kinds of different stuff, right? But here we can see some of the similarities here, and William Jones noted them as well. So we learned about the Aryans from their early written sources, right? From the Vedas. We saw the soma, right? This drink that is spoken about in the Vedas, that these people would drink and kind of stay up all night praying, because it gives you a bit of a buzz and keeps you awake. And then we were going to get to this ancient city in Turkmenistan, and that's kind of where we were when we left off. So I'd like to watch that last little bit, and I just need to figure out where we were in the documentary so I can advise people at home. So just give me 10 seconds here.
And with up to 5 million people.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's William Jones. Here's the soma. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start, for online people, I'm going to start the video at 38:31. And we're going to watch until 47:15. That's where we were meant to sort of end off on Friday, but we sort of ran out of time, okay? So for online people, we'll watch that section of the video. then we'll come back and we'll talk about this site in Turkmenistan, okay? So where we are in the video, he just found the soma, he drank it, he got a little buzzed, and then he's going to continue on, okay? So online people, just watch this section of the video, 38:31 to 47:15, then we'll see you back here, okay? Link is still in Microsoft Teams. Yeah, so we travel to Turkmenistan, Central Asia. We meet with Victor Saryanidi, who's an archaeologist there, and he's excavating this sort of ancient civilization, right? Another river civilization, right? I think it was the Mugrab. Was that what he said the river was? I almost missed it. But what does he say about why this city was eventually abandoned? Say that a little more loudly. Yeah, so there seems to be this, again, changing climate around almost 4,000 years ago, right? So this area gets a little bit more dry, right? Remember how we said for the Indus River Valley civilizations, the monsoon changed, right? It became lighter. The rivers didn't really fill and they tracked a different way. And so the Indus River Valley people had to move out into other parts of India. And here we're seeing evidence of the same thing, right? Kind of a drying out. The river moves and people's civilization, the buildings that they've built and their fields and their canals, they don't work anymore, right? They don't fill with water. You can't raise your crops, and so you have to move, right? You have to move on somewhere else. And so for our Indo-Aryan people, it seems like they were living in the area of this kind of city, and then as the climate changed, they were forced to move off somewhere else, and that's what brought them into kind of northwestern India in the first place, right? So he's trying to track down exactly where these people came from, right? And we hear about some of the technology. What kind of technology did these people have? Yeah, they built four-wheeled carts, right? Which our narrator says that those are mentioned in the Rig Veda, right? What else did they have at this site that the Indo-Aryans also had? Yeah, they had domesticated horses, right? Horses come from Central Asia, the open areas in Central Asia, and these people domesticated the horse and brought it with them into India. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Let me just see. Got a lot of there. Yeah, there's the city. That's quite a city, is it not? Holy cow! Right? Victor must have been working out there for his whole career, probably. Yeah, so this is the city. The city is Gonur, and again, it seems to have been on a trade route, right? We said that civilizations in the Mediterranean and Egypt and Mesopotamia, they knew about and were trading with civilizations in India, right? And a city like this would have been halfway, right? It would have been kind of a staging area for trade between the West and the East, right? So Victor says he's found evidence of ivory and gold and silver, and those things would have been traded back and forth. And we also see some evidence of social stratification, right? Graves that are, have expensive things buried in them, right? The sacrifice of a horse. Horses are, well, they're still expensive, right? And they were certainly expensive in the ancient world as well. But yeah, as climate changes, as rivers move, people have to adjust, right? People have to move with the environment. Let me see. Okay, I have some textbook stuff for you to read here that talks a little bit about the Indo-European language family and talks about how kind of Indo-Aryan culture changes over the next period. And it kind of sets this will kind of set the foundation for the sort of Indian culture and for Hinduism as we know it today, okay? So I just have 4 questions for you that will talk about some of these changes and some of the social organization that the Indo-Aryans kind of bring with them and then kind of continue to develop. Then after that, we get to talk about some religious stuff. All right, so I'll turn you loose. I'll give you some time to read and to answer some questions, and then as usual, we'll talk about them. So, what have I got here? 4 pages. I'm going to give you... How much time? 25 minutes? Are you crazy? 15. We'll see how 15 goes. 25 minutes, Felicia. Come on. Come on. Page 76. Yeah, there we go. How are we doing there, people? Are we ready to chat or not quite?
Yeah.
Heck no?
Yes.
Yes? I'll tell you what. How about we take a quick break? When we come back, I'll give you just a couple more minutes and then we'll talk about this, okay? All right. Quick break. In. Okay, so we are back. I'm going to put this on the screen here. There we go. So we've talked about this before, but help me out. Indo-European language family, what is that?
Huh? You said that we will give us a
Oh yeah, I said I would give you a few more minutes. Okay. Okay. 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes. Then we will talk. You're right, Felicia, I did say that. I just got so excited about
copy.
the subject material that I just wanted to like just do it, you know, but I'll wait. I'll wait, I guess. Look very sleepy there, Victoria. I saw you in the lounge. I thought I was gonna have to come in and like poke you with a stick. Okay, people, I can wait no more. I'm so excited and must hear your answers to these questions. So, tell me, what is the Indo-European language family? It's a language family, what? In the? Okay.
It has 9 branches.
It has 9 branches.
Everything is native to Western and Southern Eurasians.
Yeah, it seems to, well, yeah, the roots of this tree, right? The roots of this language tree seem to be in kind of southern Russia, Central Asia, around kind of the Black Sea area, somewhere in there. And what else?
Oh, they have the ancestral language, which is Proto-Indo-European,
Right?
and the people who spoke it called known as Indo-Europeans.
And the people who spoke it,
Known, and people who spoke it Indo-Europeans, like known as.
yeah, so we have this kind of language that we don't really know what it was like, right? This proto-Indo-European, right? But again, it was spoken by a group of people in this area thousands and thousands of years ago, and then it kind of gave birth to other languages, right? So as people started to migrate out of that region, they started to encounter other people who spoke other languages. They kind of borrowed words from them, and the languages continued to evolve. And so they all kind of branched into different sounding languages. But again, they have a common ancestor, right? And so all of those languages that you see in the little tree, again, you wouldn't really think that they were connected. You wouldn't think that they were related, but in fact, they are, right? There's an underlying similarity to them. What kind of changes happen over the 4 centuries from when the Aryans kind of arrive in northern India to the part where they kind of continue to spread and sort of develop in that area? What kind of changes do we see?
Aryan tribes, like they developed the animal domestication, and then chariots and wagons.
Yes, so they bring those, yeah, they bring those things with them, right? They bring horses and chariots and wagons with them, right? They bring their own technology. What other kind of things are happening?
Worship numerous idols.
Say again?
Worship numerous gods, offering sacrifices.
Okay, so we hear a little bit about sacrifices that,
Sacrificing.
yeah, that are offered to the gods, yes. Yeah, some new technology is kind of imported into the region, right? And as we well, we haven't really talked too much about this, but technology does drive social and cultural change, does it not? Yeah, I think we're all really familiar with how technology can do that, and it certainly does it in ancient India as well. What else kind of happens?
They encountered indigenous people and interact with.
Yeah. So they kind of the Indo-Aryans are coming in. Of course, there's already people living in India before, right? People from the Indus River Valley civilization and from southern India, and they kind of mix in with those people, right? And so their cultures interact, things get borrowed, people start to intermarry, and they kind of start to develop into a single group, right? These Indo-Aryans kind of blend themselves into India and vice versa. What kind of political destructions? What kind of political structures do we see developing? Yeah, because one of the things that kind of happens when the Indo-Aryans kind of move into India is we see kind of a rebirth of complex civilization, right? It takes, several hundred years, but just like we saw in Indus River Valley where things got complex and we started to see cities and all that stuff, the same thing happens in this period, right? That we start to see again bigger villages and bigger cities develop, more social complexity, societies that have differences in status and wealth and power. All these things start to happen again, right? But in a different sort of way. What other things can we say about the political structures?
Agriculture becomes more important because the growth of the population.
Right?
And then economic developments and the landscape was dominated by kingdoms and oligarchies.
Right. So we see, so these pastoralists that come in, the Indo-Aryans, agriculture starts to become more important, right? They start to grow rice. They start to have a food surplus. They start to get the development of civilizations and hierarchies. We start to see some people assume the position of king, right? And so some people who were head of their clans or their tribes or sort of a multi-tribe group now put themselves up as kings, right? And they try to convince people that they are favored by the gods, right? And the king will protect them if you obey the king, right? And so we see this thing kind of happening. What do we see in terms of social hierarchies? That's interesting too. Yep. We have a patriarchal. Oh, inheritance? Yes. Yep. So we have inheritance of wealth and property and name and title through the male line, and of course that works for kings as well. We also have the sort of development of a social system too. What's that called?
Varnas, it's four of them. There's like Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra.
Okay.
It's like the Brahmins is like the priest, the purest, and like the most respected. The Kshatriya is like the one, the respectable one, and the one who like help the Brahmins. And the Sudra is basically the servants, and the Vaishya is like common, just like
Yeah, so the Indo-Aryans bring with them this kind of very loose social distinction, right, of sort of priests and warriors and commoners. And again, you can kind of move between one or the other, right, if you change your occupation. But as time goes on during this Vedic age, that system is kind of elaborated, and it's also becomes a little more rigid, right? So people can't move between the groups as easily as they could, right? And like Felicia mentioned, we have Brahmins, who are the priestly class. We have Kshatriyas, who are the warriors and kings and people who are in charge. We have the Vaishyas, who are regular people, right? Farmers or merchants. And then we have Shudras, right? People who are at the bottom of society, sometimes servants, sometimes artists, sometimes people with no skills. They're at the bottom, right? And so this is a kind of a social or an economic hierarchy, but we also find out it has a bit of a religious element to it as well, right? Whereas people in the bottom Varna are kind of seen to be not as religiously pure, right? They're somehow polluted or kind of impure in some way, right? And so your ability to kind of participate in ritual has to do with how kind of religiously pure you are. And so the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas are more pure, and so they get to do the rituals. The Vaishyas and the Shudras are less pure, they're more polluted, and so they have to kind of stay back a little bit. They can't really participate. So kind of interesting, right? This kind of social and economic hierarchy that is kind of loose and fluid during the Vedic age, it becomes more rigid. It becomes harder to sort of, if you're a Vaishya, you can't really get out of that Varna. And of course that affects your ability to participate in ritual because you have this kind of uncleanness, right, or pollution just by being a member of this group. Right? Interesting. Okay, so the next part I want to talk about religion, but we don't really have quite enough time to do it. And so what I want to do is I would just like to watch the rest of this episode on India. There's about 10 or 13 minutes left. Tomorrow I want to talk about Buddha because he's going to be very important in some political developments in India. And of course, Buddhism is a world religion, right? Or spiritual system, or whatever you want to call it. But it's hugely popular. There are millions of Buddhists around the world. And Buddhism is going to kind of get its, you know, the Buddha is going to sort of plant that seed here in northern India, right? So it'll be very interesting to kind of learn a little bit about the life of the Buddha, what the philosophy is. And if you compare it with kind of other religious systems, especially some of the ones we've talked about, it's very different. And it's very interesting that people would come up with a whole new way of thinking about spirituality and the nature of the universe and all of that stuff. But we'll get to that tomorrow. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll just put the rest of the video on, and people at home, you can watch. Again, we've got about 13 minutes left, I think. 47. Yeah, maybe about 10 minutes left. And so we'll watch that, and then I'll let you go so we can get ready for tomorrow. Coolio? Okay. So online people, just watch the rest of that episode of the video from, we stopped at 47:15, so just watch from there to the end, okay? Okay, let's do it. Yeah, that looks like fun. So, um, maybe just one more thing before we go. So, that's kind of interesting, right? So, India has this Mahabharata, geez, I always say it wrong. Mahabharata, this sort of epic story of a battle, right? And it's almost it's a myth, right? It's this epic mythological story that's supposed to take place thousands of years ago, right? And it's supposed to be a war involving heroes and villains and gods and interesting creatures and all kinds of things, right? And so it's a myth in every sense of the word, right? It's passed down generation after generation. There are supernatural elements to this story. And there are, sounds like there's not just one lesson, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned from Mahabharata. But as you can see, an Indian archaeologist actually went to the site of this great battle, and he's kind of found some evidence that is aligned with the story, right? So the idea here is that, yes, the story is heavily fictionalized, right? People have elaborated on it, but there's some kind of essential truth, right? There's some sort of event happened here that inspired the story, and then the story developed from there, right? And was kind of embellished, and new pieces were added in, and other pieces were forgotten, and the story continued to develop and evolve. But there actually is a historical kind of basis to it. And interestingly enough, the same thing happened with the city of Troy. Do you know about the Iliad and the Odyssey from Homer, ancient Greek epic poem or epic book? In it, the Greeks sail off to the city of Troy, and they lay siege to the city to try to kind of conquer it, right? They're trying to retrieve Helen, are they not? I forget how it goes. Anyway, there's the Trojan horse and the whole thing. But an archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann actually thought that he could read the myth and find the city. And until then, people assumed that the city of Troy was mythical, that it didn't exist. But in fact, Heinrich Schliemann found Troy based on the myth. And so this archaeologist here in India kind of did a similar thing, where he read the myth and then tried to find some connection in the archaeology, and shockingly manages to do so, just like Heinrich Schliemann. Everybody laughed at Heinrich Schliemann when he said he was going to go and find Troy. All the scholars were like, what are you talking about? It's a myth, Heinrich, you crazy man, right? But then, shockingly, he found the city. So it's interesting how some of these myths have some sort of basis of truth, right? Something actually happened. Again, I'm sure it didn't happen exactly like it says in Mahabharata, but there's some sort of connection, right? And again, it's become sort of it's become a piece of Indian identity, right? A piece of what it is to be Indian is connected to the story. Right? Okay, everyone's getting restless, so I'm going to call it there. That is all for today. Come back tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Buddha. The Buddha. All right. See you tomorrow. Have a nice afternoon. Peace, love, and happiness. Stay in school. Say no to drugs. Call your mother. See you tomorrow.